All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back and happy Tuesday. If you're joining us for the first time, my name is Richard and I'm a Program Support Associate here at Attendance Works. This is session 3, our last session for our Louisiana e-learning series. As always, before we start, I am going to go over some housekeeping. We will be using the chat a lot during our time together, so be sure to locate that at the bottom of your screen. If you do use the chat, just make sure your message is sent to everyone so that everyone can look at your message and we can respond to them. And also, if you have any questions, feel free to put that in chat and I'd be more than happy to assist you. We do ask that you mute yourselves just for now, just to minimize distractions. When we get to breakout rooms later in the session, you obviously have a chance to unmute both your audio and video, and we really highly encourage you to do so, especially because we are a smaller group today. I do want to encourage participation. It's going to make a huge difference in our discussions together. Likewise, if it's not a problem, if you can turn on your camera, if you're able, that'll be really helpful for us. But on that end, if you do have any internet connection issues, the first thing that we recommend is to turn off your video. If that also doesn't work, you can always use in the call-in numbers that you received in your confirmation email. As always, again, we are recording this session and we recorded the first 2 sessions. So if you need to revisit any of the material, the resources, the presentations, the recordings, you should have already received a follow-up email for sessions 1 and 2, and you'll receive session 3 shortly. And towards the end of our session today, there is a survey that we would love for you to fill out. This will help improve and inform the work that we do. And we really do sincerely appreciate your feedback. Thank you in advance. At the very, very end of our time together, we have what we call parking lot time. That's time for you to hang out with your colleagues. It's unscripted, it's unrecorded, and it's just time for you to, again, hang out with your colleagues, ask questions to the presenters if you have any. And we do encourage you to stay for that if you have time. Did Shonika, was she able to join? Oh, yes. I do
Greetings.
see. Hi, Shonika. I'll pass it over to Shonika.
Greetings, everyone. I am super excited to see you guys. Sorry, I am out and about taking care of some other attendance things, but I definitely wanted to join because this is actually one of my favorite sessions. Creating those partnerships is going to be key to this work that we're doing. Just wanted to share that when I did the research a while back on finding out our most chronically absent students in the state of Louisiana, and I found that they were our migrants, our foster, and our homeless kids. I started to make partnerships with teams that actually work with those families. So this week, I'm actually going to be presenting to all of the migrant liaisons across the state, as well as the homeless liaisons on Friday, just so that we can learn to better do the work that we're doing in terms of attendance and how we can support those families. So again, thank you guys for joining this last session. I hope you can definitely brainstorm on ways that we can partner with other people within our school, but also supporting community partners as well that can help us with this work. If you, of course, have any questions or need to thought partner around who can be a community partner for you, please reach out, shalnika.adams@le.gov. Thank you again for joining us, and I'm going to pass it back off to our facilitators. Thank you guys so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Shalnika. Hey, it's me, Nick Connor, coming to you from Vermont. I'm a senior fellow with Attendance Works, and I'm joined by my colleague, Maria Casey, who's the Associate Director of Development over at Attendance Works, coming to you from California. And so I am so happy, and Shalnika, thanks for bringing us in. I love when you bring us in. You always have a little tidbit of what's going on in Louisiana, and hearing that you're working with some of the caseworkers throughout the state to support young people who are maybe migrant youth and some other populations. It really gets at the heart of what we're going to be talking about today. So it's really good to see you all, Mary, Shalia, Monica. I know we've spent some time together, so welcome to session 3. Excited to learn from you all today a little bit as well. We've got a lot of expertise in the room. And if we move on to the next slide, we can talk about kind of a recap of some of what we're doing and lead us into today. So in our previous sessions, we had session 1 where we really spent some time talking about whole school engagement strategies. what it means to really have those tier ones. We're learning about how to develop a multi-tiered system of support for attendance. In session 2, we spent a good amount of time really talking about early intervention strategies and talking a little bit about some data as well. And today we're going to be talking about partnering to make a difference. So as we move into this next slide, we've just a quick review. Richard named this at the start, but if anybody is looking for the recording from session 2, the slides, we've got a whole lot of resources that we've included as well. So these will be coming out right after this as well, so you can see any of the past materials as well. We can go into the next slide. So we've done this in the past, and I would just love to know who's here with us. We can use it in the chat, or you can also shout it out. I love when people are talking because we have a small group. We're going to be looking to you all a lot to open up and share it today. So I want to encourage you early. Your name, role, community, maybe what school or district you're representing. And I'd also love to know if there is a key community partner that you work with. So if there's somebody in your community that really helps you to engage young people in your community, love to know who you're partnering with. If anybody wants to throw that into the chat, or go ahead and take yourself off mute. Mary, thank you for chiming in as always. Any partners that you're working with, Mary? I think you came off mute and then you went back on mute. Let me get you. Still, I think it's still on mute for me. I don't know. Oh, we got you now, Mary. Oh, perfect. Loud and clear. Thank you.
Like, I think it's something with our internet here at the school. It's like there's like a little lag.
No,
I'm not sure. I may not be the right person. Probably would need to ask our principal if we're working with anybody. I know that we've worked with VOA counselors in the past, parish counselors to kind of reach out and help foster relationship with families. And then our early childhood coordinator is excellent about reaching out because she works with our local Head Starts, our local public preschool centers, and then of course all our preschool and early childhood things within the parish. So those would be some people that I could think of just off the top of my head.
Love it.
That help support us.
Awesome. Thanks, Mary. And I feel like we always start these sessions and the lights are down behind you. And I'm wondering if it's like a nap time of some kind.
It's nap time. Yes. All my little friends are asleep behind me.
That is beautiful. I love it. I see when the light comes on too, which must be like dismissal or something like that. I love it.
Yeah, they start waking up and my assistant is helping. So if you see little heads walk by, there is another adult monitoring in the room. So they're not just running amok.
So good. Thanks for being here again, Mary. Appreciate it. Any other folks that want to share an important community partner? I see Monica's out here too. And we're going to talk about today, we're going to spend a good amount of time how we generate partnerships, how we utilize partnerships, and how they're critical to supporting young people in attendance. So we can keep moving. We're going to get into some polls here pretty quickly too. So this next one, just looking for any kind of response that folks have. Thanks, Richard, for launching that poll. We're just curious to know from session 1 and 2, what are the pieces that have been some takeaways for you all? We always like to know how things are going, if there's anything that's standing out that's been helpful to you in particular. And we just like to see kind of what people are taking away from this. So if anybody wants to throw into that poll, great. If anybody wants to put anything into the chat, if it's not in this poll, love it. Everybody's welcome to participate here. Awesome. Seeing some responses come in for sure. And Maria, this is great because I'm seeing responses from all over the map, and we're seeing a lot of different takeaways. One in particular is the multi-tiered approach to reducing absenteeism, beginning with prevention. Absolutely. Love to see that that's something folks are taking away. It's so critical to addressing some of the attendance issues that we're seeing. Seeing the key functions of the attendance team. Love it. We're going to talk about 4 and 5 today. Identifying the root causes of absenteeism. Yes. Are we centering the voices of our students and families as we identify those root causes? So good. Seeing some more things come into the chat too. Want to just make that note. Working closely with the court system, Finns, Eckards. Awesome. Beautiful. Okay, we can close this poll, Richard, because we're going to jump right into another one. But thanks everybody for reflecting on what are those things that were sticking out to you all. And we've got just a check for learning piece, revisit some content that we covered before here in our next one. I think, Richard, you can go ahead and launch that poll if it's up. So this is that pop quiz, not a big deal, don't sweat it. We're just checking for learning and want to revisit some of the things that we've covered. So Richard, I think, is going to launch that poll. Maybe it's out there. But some of the things, just to true, false, pretty straightforward stuff here. So the first one, early intervention begins when students miss 20% or more. True or false? Number two, there are many factors affecting student attendance. Number three, schools must form a standalone attendance team. So we're looking for true or false there. And you matter. I'm going to give that one to you. You do. So nobody get that one wrong, all right? We're so grateful that you're here. Okay, so we're seeing some results coming in. Love it. The first one, early intervention begins when students miss 20% of school. Across the board, folks are identifying false on that. Absolutely. We really want to be responding early to young people. We want to be, as soon as we can, responding to any student missing time. In fact, we want to be connecting with students. That early intervention really starts with prevention, right? What are those foundational pieces? How are we making positive contacts? So nailed it on that one. Number two, many factors. Absolutely. That's the most common question I get in my work. And it's, what's the reason students miss school? And it is all over the board. It depends on the community. It depends on the time of year. So many factors. So love to see that. The last one, schools must form a standalone attendance team. It's not necessary. Some schools will have a standalone attendance team. Other schools will put it into their MTSS teams or PBIS teams. It can fit into an already existing team where you're really setting forth an agenda item around attendance and that you're focusing on attendance. You don't have to, but some folks are going to go ahead and move forward with creating their own. It doesn't have to be, but it can be. Okay, so thanks for everybody on that. You matter 100%. Love to see it. And we can keep moving, Richard. So for today, we just want to talk about, there's really a couple of key factors that we want to make sure that we're covering today and that you all hopefully will be walking away with, is we want you to learn strategies about how we mobilize the entire school staff and community agencies to partner. And I want to focus on that word, to partner with families to improve attendance. So we're going to spend a lot of time with that word, partner and partnership, and that's going to be a highlight of today. At the end here, we're also going to cover a little bit of like, how do we know if what we're doing is working, right? We've got all these team functions and we're doing all these things. How are we really taking a minute to stop and reflect and say, is what we're doing having the impact we want it to have? So we're going to spend a little time on that. Next slide. Here are our attendance functions of a school team. And just as a reflection from session 2, we talked about the first 3 functions of an attendance team, where we're talking about looking at data. We're talking about connecting with our students and families directly. What are the assets? What are their strengths? What are their barriers? What are some strategies? Really centering that work. And today, we're really going to spend some time about mobilizing everyone in our school community to address attendance. And number 5, we're going to finish it up with really talking about, are we making a difference? What's happening with our efforts? Is it having the impact we want it to have? And are we making that difference? So we can move into the next slide here, Richard. And we really want to just jump right in. So team function number 4, mobilizing everybody in the school community to address attendance. This is going to be essential that we're talking about the whole school and community. So as we move into this next slide, when we talk about mobilizing the whole community, let's talk about who that means. Who are we talking about here? Up top and in the center, right where it should be, is our students and families, right? The students and families are critical to addressing attendance and identifying barriers. They are the experts in their own lived experience, and so we need to really center and lift that voice for sure. This is also inclusive of our school staff, so all of our school staff members. Regardless of who you are in that school building, you have an impact on our students and their success with their attendance. And the last piece is engaging external partners. Who are those folks externally that can really be supporting our students when we get to a certain point? When are we bringing them in? How are we helping them be a part of our community to lift our students? Okay, so next slide. So as I mentioned, students are front and center here. And this is something that I really wanted to hit on for Louisiana, because we've had some great conversations in session 1 and session 2 about, truancy, what is truancy and how is that playing out, and what is chronic absenteeism, and how do those two play out. And Shalnika has done a great job in Louisiana of really addressing what truancy can be doing and what's the mentality behind how we support young people with attendance. And this is the biggest thing. We need to really talk about changing the power dynamics and shifting to a partnership approach. Okay, so what that means is we've got a bit of a traditional model here on the left. And when we're talking about responding to young people that maybe aren't in school, that problem-focused left side is really where we traditionally will spend a lot of our time. When we do that, we wait for 5 unexcused absences, for example, to build up. And then we're going to make that first call and say, your student has missed 5 days and you need to know X, Y, and Z will happen if they don't come back, right? That's more of a traditional response. But what we're saying is on the partnership focus side of things, initial outreach focuses on building relationships. Have we made contact with our students that may have certain risk factors or other things long before they hit these absences? Are we building that partnership early and often? How are we opening the door to conversation and support before we get to that point of needing to address absenteeism? The next piece here, one-way messaging to families. As I just said, when I call a family and it's because 5 unexcused absence and mom, I'm calling to tell you this, and here's the information I'm giving you, and this is what happens if you don't do anything. That's one-way communication. We've got to shift that power dynamic and talk about two-way communication. Are we actually listening to our students and families? Are we actually asking about their strengths? Are we asking about their assets? What do they need? How can we support them? That's a two-way conversation that's really shifting from a problem-focused attention to really a partnership-focused messaging. A couple more. Do we focus on just the barriers, or do we focus on those strengths like I was talking about? If we're only focused on the barriers with what's wrong, how can we help that family lift up if we don't even know what strengths that they have? If we aren't asking and checking in with those students and families, what are they bringing to the table? They've got so many strengths and so many opportunities to support this, and they are the experts of their own lived experience. And so if we aren't coming to them and offering support to them and centering them and working with them, not at them, we're missing the mark 100% of the time. The last one is presuming that we have all the answers. We don't. Again, we need to collaborate here. It's really important that we look at our students and families as partners in this work, not as something to work at or on. Okay, so we really need to center how we're going to collaborate, encourage practices that build upon their assets and priorities. That's where we got to start. So again, problem focused to partnership focused. When we think about truancy in Louisiana, or we think about other aspects, this messaging applies. Okay, so we can move into the next slide, Richard. And we're going to take a quick look at a video that's going to demonstrate the impact that we all have, for better or worse, and that everybody in our building can have.
Hey, Mr. Q! Did you see that? Why would somebody do that?
Please go into the classroom, no talking, quietly.
Hey, Miss Meredith, how you doing?
We need you inside.
How do you think that makes us feel? I forgot my number.
What's your name?
Jordan?
What's your last name?
Carter?
All right. Go ahead.
School is hard enough.
Come on in, sit down quietly at your desks, and begin writing.
This kind of stuff just makes it harder.
I said quietly, please. Who's talking? Is it you, Sophie? Don't let it be you.
Don't believe me?
Sophie.
Please just watch.
I'm not up here for me, I'm up here for you. Pay attention, okay? Now somebody answer me. Somebody needs to answer me really fast.
Every time we're ignored or yelled at or silenced, the teacher takes away what's possible.
No horseplay, no running, and especially no talking.
Moment by moment.
Miss Garrity, your student's behavior yesterday in the lunchroom, it was terrible. Next time, silent lunch.
Did you hear that? Stay in line and catch a bubble. I'm not playing.
If this is education, we're in trouble. Bye, Miss McGarrity. Frederick Douglass said, once you learn to read, you'll be forever free. The way it is now, 2 of the 3 of us will never be able to really read. It doesn't have to be this way.
Hey, Jordan, how you doing?
Good.
Good.
Everyone we meet throughout our day can make a difference.
I've been waiting for you to arrive.
All the difference.
Good, how are you?
Great.
Hi, Jordan. Bye, Jason.
Good morning, Jordan.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Good.
Go ahead and put your number in.
Talk with us, not at us.
That's okay. I'll look it up for you. Go ahead, sweetheart.
Okay.
All right. Have a
Teach us what we need to know. That's how we get smarter.
Well, good morning, Sophie, Janicia, and Jordan.
And when you talk with us and teach us, give us bigger and bigger words.
Now what I'd like you to do, children, is turn around and converse with your neighbor and discuss where the mother might have gone.
Words that we can use to read and understand.
She is prey for eagles, so she hunts at night.
And that will take us places we can never reach without you.
Remember, we're entering the learning zone. Now, how can we show our respect to the children and teachers who are working?
We can walk quietly.
Yes. Okay, kids, so what I'd like you to do is continue writing your narrative, documenting your emotions if you were the baby owl and your mother abandoned you in the nest.
What can you do? Learn all that you can so that you can challenge us to be our best.
You would have stayed and assisted them in whatever they needed.
Share yourself with us and show us how to share ourselves with others. Give us courage. Give us compassion. Help us find our own voices so we can become who we are meant to be. Why would you want to silence us?
Great. Thanks, Richard. We can move into the next slide. That video is, speaking for myself, always very powerful. One of the things that the young person in that video says is it doesn't have to be this way. And that always sticks with me because it's like, absolutely, it does not need to be that way at all. And it's a lot that we can control. So just really quickly, feel free to throw it into the chat or if you want to name it out loud. Connection between the video and attendance, that's great. But I really want to hear, how are you encouraging everyone in your school to get involved in attendance and engagement? We saw all the different players there. How are you encouraging folks around you to be involved, letting them know that they do have an impact on students' attendance? If anybody wants to throw in anything into the chat or come off mute, feel free. And I wanted to also welcome Dr. Russell, and I see Amy's here as well. So welcome to session 3. Glad you're here. Did somebody want to chime in?
I'll chime in.
Yeah.
I feel like every single moment that we interact with our families, schools, communities, students is a shared moment and an opportunity to engage in like positive connection and belonging, and that kind of that's that power in our relationships with the people around us, right? So that's that proactive, those things that we can do proactively.
Yes, absolutely. Is it Bick? Am I saying that right? Great. Thank you, Bick. It's so true. Every interaction we have, not only with young people, but anybody in our lives, is an opportunity. And I love when it's framed like that. So just one quick readout from the chat. I'm seeing some things here. Kids who feel loved and supported are more likely to want to come to school each day. Our entire staff welcomes kiddos at drop-off and pick-up time. Principals, teachers, SRO, everybody. That is it. That is it, Mary. I love to see it. Thank you for sharing that. We're going to spend a little bit more time moving forward with how we're including everybody. For now, we're going to move forward, and I'm going to pass it off to Maria.
Okay, thank you. Such a powerful section that we just went through together. I know every time I see that video, it makes me tear up a bit because I'm very sentimental, if you will, and deep feeling when it comes to children, and I don't like for them to feel hurt. So that always has an impression on me. So Nick has highlighted that we need to move from not partnering with parents, sort of having judgment and blame around them if we don't think they're doing a good job, to really partnering with parents and really honoring what they bring. We talked about as well that it's important for the whole school to be involved in what happens around attendance. And so we have a tool that we want to present to you today, and it's called Caring Conversations. And some of you may be familiar with this, and some of you may already be practicing it. And there's some steps in this process that we think are really important to follow. Next slide, please. So I just want to go over a couple of concepts that we've already covered. We know about the multi-tiered system of support. Caring conversations can absolutely happen at every level. You want them to be a part foundationally of what you do, those warm welcomes and greetings that you do for all students and their families. In tier one, you certainly want to have caring conversations with both your students and your families on a regular basis when you see them. And tier two, you want to have caring conversations with those students who in fact are moderately chronically absent, or those at risk of being moderately chronically absent. And you want to figure out what's happening and why it is that they're beginning to falter in terms of showing up. And then, of course, with your students who are severely chronically absent, those missing 20% or more, again, you want to have caring conversations. Next slide, please. So just reviewing again what constitutes satisfactory attendance, you know, those who miss less than 5% are what we call satisfactory. 5 to 9.9% are at risk, and we want to pay attention to them because we don't want them to tip into the moderate category. And those 10 to 19.9%, of course, are our moderately chronically absent students. And then severe, 20 to 49.9%, and extremely chronically absent, those 50% or more. Next slide, please. So it's really important to tailor your conversations to the student's attendance status. So for satisfactory attendance, you want to congratulate both the students and the parents when you see them on the students' good attendance, and ask them what they're doing to enable them to be successful. Because sometimes if you know what's happening with one student, you can transfer that maybe to what's happening with another and offer ideas to the parents and the students about how they can more easily show up. And for those students who are at risk, you want to check on them and you want to see how things are going. You want to find out if there are things that are beginning to happen that are making it difficult for them to come to school. And again, you want to do that in not a blaming, judgmental way, but one that that requires active listening. And then for those students who are chronically absent, if they're moderately chronically absent, you want to let them know that you care when they're missing. You want to let them know that you miss them and you're glad they're back in the classroom again. You want to figure out what motivates them to come to school, and also begin to figure out what's keeping them away. And if a student is severely or extremely chronically absent, you absolutely want to talk with parents and caregivers. If it's an older student, you want to talk with that student as well. And sometimes you can have conversations with the younger students, and you want to consider who you might involve in the conversation with families and with students. And sometimes here's where you bring in those outside resources. Next slide, please. So we all as educators have probably had conversations that we wish we could take back. I want you just to think for a moment about an instance when you had a conversation that didn't go well. Think about why you think it didn't go well and what might have helped you have a better conversation. So just think about that for a second. Okay, I can think of a time. And but first, I want to call on a couple of you. Anyone just want to offer when you might have had a conversation that went badly and what could have helped, what could have made it go better?
I would like to go ahead and share. Basically, conversations that go badly for the most part for me is like a miscommunication. So if it depends on what it is, it could be that we can be more specific in what it is that we're talking about, clarify. Sometimes people are talking to you and you're thinking they're talking about something else, but they're actually talking about something different, something in particular. So you need to also be able to communicate with the person you're speaking with to clarify, what it is that, they're asking or saying so that you can respond appropriately. So I would say miscommunication is one of the main factors in conversations going badly, because they can be offensive to people and you don't really mean what what they're saying because they're misunderstanding what it is you're talking about.
Absolutely. And remember, Nick highlighted that we're trying to build partnerships. And to build partnerships, you have to be an active listener. And you do have to sometimes ask clarifying questions about what someone's saying, so that in fact you're not operating on misperceptions, or you're thinking one thing and they're saying another. So it's really important that communication, building that partnership, and using every opportunity to build a relationship with your parents and students. Anyone else? One more example maybe of something that didn't go so well and how you're thinking about it at this point. Monica, I see you, you're not on mute. Would you like to share something?
Temperament. The temperament from probably both sides of the conversation.
Can't hear you, Monica. A little bit more loudly.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better.
Okay, the temperament, how the parent was feeling, as well as how I was feeling at that time, and the fact that it had been some prior conversations from more than myself, other people about the same situation. So they brought that previous conversation to the new conversation, and it went real bad, real fast.
That is a common thing. Likely more than one person has been talking with the parents. They may be saying the same thing on different things, but absolutely bringing something else to the conversation from what occurred before can be disastrous. And again, that active listening and sort of understanding context and where you are is really key. Thank you so much for sharing that, Monica.
One other thing I'm sorry, one other thing I just thought about. I've talked to parents recently, and immediately they come and think the conversation is negative because they say they never hear anything positive. So it starts off bad because they think you're calling for a negative reason, and it's almost like sometimes you can hang up and call back because you can't say anything to them.
I hear you. Sometimes you bring the past to the present, and there's already a lack of trust and maybe a feeling of disrespect, and so that's where you start. And you sometimes it's necessary to reset, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that too. Thank you so much, everyone. It's really helpful. Did you have something else to say, Vic?
Yeah, I wanted to add, especially for special educators or people who are working with specific populations, we have specific language and acronyms that we throw at our parents. And that is a barrier in itself, because we're using our academic, educator language, and the parents have little idea. And so they can't even be a partner in that if they don't even understand what we're saying to them.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Again, communication, the words you use. It's really important to think about the parent, think about their communication style, and the fact that they may not know what all those words mean. And it just sounds like you're being hoity-toity, accusative, and perhaps judgmental, and that you're up here and they're somewhere way at the bottom. So you don't want that to happen. Thank you so much, everyone. Next slide, please.
Well, I think Shonika also wanted to jump in.
Oh, okay. Shonika, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that with both of what they were saying in terms of our parents, they have that anxiety when they call, when a call is made from the school already. One of the things that I share with our CWAs, excuse me, is that we have to understand that there will be some families that deal with generational disrespect, meaning that they might have felt harmed by the school system when they were children, and they're projecting what happened to them on what may be going on currently. And it goes back to, one, maybe they're not operating from a sense of, I understand and I can't partner because you're speaking over my head. And so one of the things that we've discussed is how our language and our communication should be written at a fourth grade reading level, so all of our parents can feel like they can participate in the conversation and that they can properly be informed and advocate for their kids. So it's about understanding, one, that the hurt that they're projecting most likely has nothing to do with you currently, and everything to do with what may have happened with them in the past. And two, they don't feel a connection because they don't feel like they're a part of the conversation in the first place.
Absolutely. It's not a conversation. It's one person talking at another person. So thank you so much for that, Shanika, and all of your observations. They're really setting the stage for where we're going to go next. So next slide, please. Okay, so we have a scenario, and here's where Nick and I get to try out our role-playing sort of acting ability on you. I'm going to read through the scenario, and then I'm going to be the teacher, and Nick is actually going to play the role of the parent. So Peter is a 7th grader who struggles to keep up. Since returning to school in person, he's been quiet and distracted in class. In the first 12 weeks of school, he has missed 8 days, so he's severely chronically absent, and been tardy 15 times. Peter has the responsibility for getting his younger siblings to elementary school since his father is at work by the time the children wake up for school. The entire family is still grieving the death of his wife, so they have a very traumatic situation. And I'm in this scenario, the teacher doesn't know about everything that's going on in the lives of the children in this family or with the husband. So I'm going to play again the role of teacher, and Nick's going to be the parent. And I am quite perturbed that that Peter is not showing up, and we're just going to begin a conversation that could go very badly. So I've got Mr. Brown. It's Peter Brown on the phone. Hello, Mr. Brown.
Hello. Who's this?
This is Peter's teacher. This is Mrs. Casey. I just want to say I've just been trying to reach you for weeks now, and this is the first time I've gotten a response. Thanks for the response, but my goodness, I just can't understand why you haven't gotten back to me sooner. And I just want to say as well that I'm so concerned because Peter has been out so much during these first months of school, and he's missing so much work.
Ms. Casey, can I interrupt you? I'm feeling a little bit on my back foot right now and not feeling real comfortable with how you're coming at me. I answer my phone every day. I don't know. Nobody's called me. Nobody's said anything to me. You don't know what we have going on.
Okay, well, I don't want to go back and forth around that. I in fact have been calling, and I just want to know, Mr. Brown, can you do better at getting Peter both to school and getting him to school on time?
Ms. Casey, no. The answer is no, and I'm not real sure. I'm starting to understand really quickly why Peter doesn't like school, why he doesn't want to be there. But we've got a lot of stuff going on in our household that I don't think you know about. And when you come to me in this way, I don't feel respected at all.
Okay, so we'll stop the conversation here. Not a great start. Didn't have a relationship with Mr. Brown, and certainly don't have one after starting a conversation in that way. So now we're just going to begin a second conversation, and we're going to do this a bit better. We're going to demonstrate and model a better way to have the conversation. So I've got Mr. Brown on the phone again. Hello, Mr. Brown. How are you?
Hi, this is Mr. Brown. Who is this?
This is Mrs. Casey. I am Peter's English teacher at his middle school, and I'm calling just to have a conversation with you about Peter and how he's doing. Do you have a few minutes?
Yeah, I have a couple of minutes.
Oh, great. I just want to say that Peter is such a nice young man when he's in my classroom. He tries very hard. He is attentive. He doesn't cause any disturbances. And I noticed that he really does love to read. I'm just wondering, at home right now, are you noticing what Peter likes to do? I'm trying to learn more about Peter. Can you tell me about Peter and your hopes and dreams for it?
Oh my goodness, so many, and I'm a little confused because I think usually when I get a call, it's not to tell me that Peter's not a problem. So first of all, thank you for that. And I've got so many hopes and dreams for Peter. We're going through a pretty hard time at home right now, and Peter's been, having a hard time a little bit, and we're trying to work through it as a family right now. But he loves drawing. He loves his science class in particular. He's trying really hard, but we've got a lot going on.
Great, thank you. Okay, we'll stop the conversation here, but I would like to think that after you start a conversation like this, you can proceed to other things that you need to discuss. But you've created a better relationship maybe than before you came on the phone. You didn't put Mr. Brown on the defensive, but let's go to the next slide. Okay, so there's a process for having caring conversations. And again, I'm not just talking about teachers, I'm talking about counselors. We're talking about anyone who is having a conversation with students or with family members, parents or caregivers. The first thing you want to do is you want to learn. Secondly, share. Thirdly, inform. You want to review attendance with students and families, but you don't want to do that right off the bat. And then fourth, discuss. And 5, arrive at a plan. And we're going to go a little bit more deeply into each of these areas. So next slide, please. Okay, so what do we learn? What do we want to learn? We want to learn about the student's family, if we can, about their hopes and dreams for their students, what the student enjoys about school this year, what's been interesting or challenging about learning. I'm just wondering, these are some ideas. What are some excellent questions you can ask to learn about a student's family? Anyone want to volunteer? Any one person? What might you start a conversation with? What might you ask to learn about a student's family? I started out by saying, how are you doing? That's helpful. Anything else? Anything that you've used with a family to learn more about the student or the family?
When our little ones start, we're kind of getting to know their families because as a pre-K teacher, that we're like their first experience with school. So we always ask about student interest because that helps us plan activities and pull things into the classroom that is going to be meaningful and relevant for them. And also fears that they have with our littles, what are some things that they might be afraid of or that might be challenging for them? We don't want to scare them, needlessly by having something in an activity that they're fearful of, but also just that gives us kind of a starting point of like, okay, what are some things we can work on to help them grow throughout the year?
Thank you. And then secondly, what are some positive observations about a student you might share with the student or family? Because the second piece is share positive things you've observed about the student. So think about a student that you've interacted with. And is there something positive that you've noticed about a student that you might share in a conversation with their parent? Anyone want to take a stab at that?
I will.
Okay.
I've started a conversation or said to the parent, "Oh, you have raised such a respectful child," and then they'll all of a sudden say, "Which one you talking about?" Like it's like that's one I send to school. I said, "Oh yes," and we'll start from there, and they'll start sharing.
Oh, great, great, great. Thank you. Okay, so having a respectful child, a lot of parents want to hear that, so that's important. Or it could be, gee, your child is so bright. They're so good at art. Oh, they love to help me in the classroom. They wipe the board or they want to help put away things. There's always something that you can find that you can share that's wonderful about a child. Or they're inquisitive. Have you found that they're inquisitive at home? Oh, they have such a curious kind of spirit and outlook. Just you know, something to give parents a positive feel that in fact you're not going to come and sort of beat them over the head with what's going on, but you really want to build that partnership with them. Okay, next slide, please. Great. So next you want to begin to inform. You've sort of broken the ice. They don't feel that you're judging them in a very negative way, that you actually care about their child. And this is really important. Every parent wants to know that you care about their child. They really want you to love their child in the way that they love their child. So it's really important to start there. But then with step 3, you need to inform. And one way to inform a parent or a student about attendance is to use a calendar. Actually, show them a calendar, or if you're on the phone and they can't see it for whatever reason, you can certainly tell them in this month on this day, and you have the calendar to refer to it and say, so that's been a total of X number of days. Interestingly enough, a lot of parents don't realize how many days their kids are missing school or a class, and how many days they're tardy. So this is very important information, and sometimes they're quite taken aback by it. You want to use this also as an opportunity to identify patterns with them. It could be that the student is absent on Mondays and Fridays, or just before vacation days or holidays. So you want to establish whether there is an attendance pattern or an absence pattern that is worth lifting up and sort of figuring out with the parent what's going on. And then you want to also be able to share that on X day, if you're the teacher calling, you're going to say, gee, they missed such an important concept on this day. And when they came back, it was a little difficult for them to catch up. So that's really important. Tie the missed days to missed learning. Next slide, please. Okay, and then on the 4th step, you want to discuss what works to get their student to school as well as the challenges. Here's where you want to build on strengths that the family may have. You know, you want to tease out what might you do in order to help your child get to school. Here we have a tool that we use, and many schools use this tool with their parents. It's called My Family's Health Bank. And here, a lot of families have transportation issues, especially when they're sick, or when there's a child who's sick and they can't get the other kids to school because they need to stay with the child who's sick, and maybe they keep the child at home. So this is a tool to help families figure out the circles of support that they can build around them in advance, so that they can call on X, Y, or Z person or entity to help their child get to school. And sometimes they may need to connect with those of you who are at the school level to let you know the problems they're having, and you can help problem solve with them about how to get their children to school. So you also want to be able to identify opportunities to make up for lost learning in the classroom. This is especially important with our older students who sometimes lose hope that they can recover. So both with the student, if you're talking with the student or if you're talking with the parent, you need to clarify avenues for making up for lost learning time, for recovering credits. And again, you want to use this help bank to identify support systems. Everyone needs support. I know I needed it when my kids were little, and you likely, if you have children who may be older now, you needed it when they were younger, you may still need it with your children. Next slide, please. And then finally, you want to arrive at a plan. And this is a really important step. And it may sometimes take more than one conversation with the parent to get to this step, but it's an important step to reach. You want to have a plan, a number of strategies for addressing absences. You want to help families to concretize what the plan is and what the steps are, and you want to figure out the resources that the family needs. So we have here a tool called My Child's Attendance Success Plan. It's a great tool to work with older students that you're working with and get them to sign on the line. And to work with when you're talking with parents. This can happen in the context of a face-to-face meeting. If you have a Zoom call, this is something that you can offer to them. But you want to figure out how to develop a plan. And then, especially if the student has been having great difficulty getting to school, you want to check back in a couple of weeks and see how things are going. If you've offered resources and you want to make sure that the family is actually connecting with the resources, and you want to see if there's anything else that you can do. You don't want to stop here. There are follow-up activities that follow this. Next slide, please. Okay, and here we have a tool that can be used for professional development purposes. It is, if you noticed on the left-hand side, we have the steps and then key points, and then we actually have a script that you can adapt. You can use this during PD sessions with teachers, with your school social workers, with counselors, with anyone who's going to have or needs to have a caring conversation with students. And you can use this and adapt it in any way that you want to, but it's great to have people sort of fill in the script and to practice with one another. It's great to do role plays with this. Next slide, please. Okay, so we want to use this as an opportunity we're such a small group in numbers. We really do constitute a discussion group. So we're not going to break out into groups, but we're going to stay in this context. We're going to turn off the recording, however, because I really do want you to be able to talk about what you would do. Wonderful input. So I just want to review this cycle of effective relationship building. It's what we've all been talking about. Starting with caring conversations, you're really beginning to build those relationships. You're identifying what needs students and families have. You can get to the point where you are offering immediate help, or you're at least explaining what the next step should be. And absolutely, as you move through this conversation and a series of conversations, you're building more trusting relationships, and parents and students have a deeper sense of partnership. And remember that diagram that Nick showed in the beginning, families and students, the wisdom and experience they bring, it really does matter. Next slide, please. So we have a short video that one of our colleagues, Lori Hobson, who was former director of attendance for Cleveland Metropolitan School District, but who is now working with Attendance Works. She's just been with us a little over a month. And she did this video when she was, in fact, still in her position with Cleveland.
As educators, so many times parents call and they're on 10 and we're on 4. And so what happens, parents are so upset and we really don't have the time to have that conversation. And so I think it's important to be able to say to a parent, you know, I can tell that you really need my attention. And right now, I don't feel I can give you my undivided attention. And what you're saying to me is so important that I would like to schedule a time where I can hear you, listen, and we can talk. I think those are also examples of where communication becomes broken when we are so busy running the school and taking care of school business, we forget that the parents are our business. And we have to take a step back and pause and realize that this parent has had an experience that hasn't been favorable. And so we owe them the opportunity to be heard, to be understood, and to do it with empathy, and do it in a way that maintains their dignity and respect. So, you know, those 3 parts to active listening, one is just to listen and take notes. And the other is to, you know, make sure that you recall what you heard and ask for clarifying questions. And those conversations take time. That's not something that you can just pick up the phone and answer and guarantee that you can walk through the stages of actively listening. It's something that has, sometimes it requires a planned conversation.
Well, I really like this video because it sort of reverses things. The scenario here is that the parent made the call, and the person at the school level just didn't have the bandwidth, or it was not a good opportunity for them to have a caring conversation with the parents. So it's, you know, here it's suggesting sometimes it's best to say, can I call you at X time, when you're more prepared to have that conversation. So this is important too. Next slide, please. Okay, keep going. All right, Nick. Sorry, I went a little over, but I thought this group was really moving with the caring conversation.
Oh, I love it. And it was such a rich conversation, and grateful to you all, and let's keep it going. So as we move forward, we're going to really talk about mobilizing the community and engaging partners. And one of the things that the pandemic has highlighted, right, is that like we can't do this solo. We can't do this without our partners. So as we move forward in our slide, I'd love to just see from you all, we've got a quick poll. And I just want to know from this group, I'm curious how you would say for yourselves that community partners and public agencies are partners in providing support to students and families in your school or in your district. Where are you all at with this one right now? How are you doing when it comes to having partners really be involved in supporting student attendance and supporting students and families across the district? So we'll take just a minute here and get some responses in. Starting to see some come in. A couple people are saying it's an urgent gap. A couple people are saying it's like pretty strongly in place, that you've got some partners at the table. It's awesome. See if we get two more responses in here, and we can keep it moving. There we go. Great. So measurable progress. People are starting to see that. So we can close this poll. Again, just kind of wanted to check the pulse on our partnerships in place. Are they being utilized to provide support to students and families? So we can go ahead and close this one, and we can move on to the next slide. So we've got a quick video. This is a video that will demonstrate community schools. And while this doesn't exist everywhere, and we know that, and this requires a lot of different resources and things, I think there's some really good pieces in this video that we'll highlight after we watch this clip.
When I first came here, it was very welcoming. It was like an open door. Like, they kind of pull you in. I didn't feel like the principal was too busy to speak to me. I didn't feel uncomfortable.
Being a community school, it's like a one-stop shop here. So parents, the community, they come into this school, all the resources are in one spot.
Having 48% of students in temporary housing, having 32% of students with disabilities, having 28% of English language learners. It's a difficult challenge, taking all of those components to now go into the classroom, to get them socially, emotionally stable, to then produce the academic.
One thing that I really appreciate about this school and the staff that's here are that they're really looking out for the community. Children come from a variety of backgrounds, come from, trauma situations. They come to our school, they're looking for somewhere where they can just come here and learn. Our school does a great job of providing a safe space for children.
Families who used to live across the street in temporary housing have gotten permanent home, and they're now in Brooklyn, Far Rockaway, and they still choose to come to 188. Makes a difference. That means that we're doing something right. We provide the washing machine. We have a schedule that we have some parents that volunteer. They come and they do the laundry here during the week or Saturdays. Something else that we definitely do here is provide the mental health services, not just for the children, but for the families.
So if a parent needs legal service, we're able to provide them legal services with some of our partner agencies. If they need a GED, we're able to assist them with that. And ESL classes, nutrition education, these are some of the things that our school provides.
Actually, this year we have improved attendance a lot. And one of the things that I feel that helps with the attendance, when they feel comfortable with the work that you do in class, doing a lot of hands-on activity, it makes them come to school on time.
They want you to succeed, and I think they do a great job.
Awesome. So again, I know that when we look at schools like that, not all of us can be in a space where it's 6:45 in the morning to 7 at night that we're with our students, but there's some really good stuff in there about, do they have a laundry machine available to support some families that may need access to that? Bringing in folks to support learning for families, mental health support for families, legal help for families. These are all huge factors when it comes to having that sense of belonging and leaning on our community partners. So when we talk about attendance and we talk about bringing in partners to support that, the higher the challenges, right? The higher those barriers are for families, the more partners we need, right? We need to do what we're responsible to do and what we're able to do. We can't do everything, okay? And so when we're talking about doing what we're responsible to do, what we're able to do, who are our partners that we can bring in and get us the rest of the way? So here's a quick list of just partners that we've seen be really, really helpful when it comes time to supporting students and families in our schools. Another thing I would note is be creative with our partners, right? Be creative with the local business is more than a spot for gift cards. It's potentially a spot for a work experience. It's potentially an opportunity for a mentorship. Bring them into the building and have them bring their trade or their skill in. So really be creative when we're talking about bringing partners to the table to really help us get to that finish line with some of our students and families. Next slide. Here are two really great examples, and we won't go into the website now. Potentially at the end, if we have some time, we'll go back. But if you are somebody that said this is an urgent gap for you, or even if you have strong partnerships, there's two things that we would highlight. 211 is a great way to identify resources, but if you haven't been to findhelp.org, really great tool. You go in, you plug in your zip code, and it will give you a list across basic needs of all community partners that are out there. So if you're looking, I had a text this morning from a parent asking if there was a local diaper bank, and I could go into findhelp.org and check that out and see where some local resources are and immediately give that back to them. So when we're talking about supporting our families, findhelp.org, I would certainly lift that one up. It's really cool what it can provide for us. Next slide. So in our last session, we talked about how we're looking at the reasons for absences and understanding root causes. And we talked about possible interventions. And you see that in the first couple columns here. Let's take it one step further and identify who are potential partners, right? So we have a young person who's maybe experiencing some anxiety, right? That's the reason they're not coming to school. Last time, we talked about different ways we can support that student, be it small groups to teach calming skills, talk about how we can meet with a school counselor, social worker, even maybe do some home visits. Great interventions. but who are potential partners to help us out with this, right? When you think about for your community, are there health centers or community centers that can really help intervene and support families? Are there other opportunities with outside therapeutic supports? For us and my community as Washington County Mental Health is like my first call. They've got some really great resources. So when we look at these root causes, they're on the left side, they're disengaged, they've got some work responsibilities. We can talk about the interventions, but how are we complementing it with potential partners, right? So this is a really great example. Again, one of the things that we hear a lot about is transportation barriers. We talk about the internal supports of carpools. Maybe we have a van. There's also potentially community resources that are available that can do some transportation. Sometimes there's local nonprofits that do transportation. Sometimes you can work with city government. So be thinking creatively about how we bring partners to the table to complement our interventions. Next slide. This is a great tool. It's just an open sheet for you to start to plug in what community partners are out there and where they can provide support. So this tool is something that's on our website, and we're also going to send it out after, but a great way for us to identify partners and see who's at the table, what they can provide. Next slide. Great. We are now going to move into team function number 5, our fifth and final team function that we wanted to highlight. We've talked about all of our team functions so far. We've talked about building a multi-tiered system of support. We talked about looking at data. We talked about engaging our partners. We want to talk about, great, we've done all these things. Does it work? How do we know if we're actually having an impact? How are we knowing if what we're doing works well, if it kind of works and we want to lift it up, or if it's actually not working at all and we want to learn from it and build something new? Those are 3 questions we really want to center as we go through team function number 5. So as we go into the next slide, important things to keep in our mind. These 4 questions as we start to talk about really evaluating our success or what we're doing. And these 4 questions are pretty critical to start with. The first one is how much did we do? And the second one is how well did we do it? So how much did we do? I'll give an example. I met with 5 students and did an attendance plan with 5 students, right? That's just quantity. I met with 5 students. How well did I do it is the next question. Well, my plan was actually to work with 10 students and I only got to 5. So it worked, but not totally. Then if I look at what was the difference for the students that did get that support, and I can see, oh, those students have a better relationship with me and their attendance has improved. The last question, what impact did it have on the school? We saw, at least for those 5 students, a decrease in chronic absenteeism, which does impact the broader school chronic absenteeism rates, right? So these 4 questions are good ways to be thinking about how we go into our evaluative process. So our next slide is going to bring us into this concept of plan, do, study, and act. And it's very complementary to those 4 questions I asked before. When we talk about how we're supporting students, when we think about, are we having an impact? Is what we're doing working? This is a great tool to use where we're assessing that current system and we're talking about what are the causes? What are the reasons for these absences? We then get into that phase where it's like, okay, we're going to pick a strategy for improvement, and then we're going to implement that strategy. We're doing that strategy. We're starting to see some outcomes. We're starting to measure it a little bit. We really need to spend some time analyzing those results. Did those results get at what we hoped it would get at? Did we see that this worked or this didn't work? From that, we're going to revise and refine, take some action, and continue to work this process. We all know, everybody on this call knows, when we are working with attendance improvement and we're working in chronic absenteeism, there's no real end game, right? There's no real finish line to, great, we did this intervention and it worked and we have no problem ever again. This is always something we need to keep looking at and keep refining because every family and every student is going to have different needs and need different support. And we have to keep working to improve. Next slide. So we're going to go through a quick example of so this Plan, Do, Study, Act, PDSA. Let's look at what it looks like in practice. How would you actually set out to do PDSA for an intervention, for example? So one of the pieces in session 2 that we talked about is the 2x10 strategy. 2x10 is where you spend 2 minutes a day for 10 straight days with one student. Try not to talk too much, let them lead. But your whole point here is I'm going to spend 2 minutes for 10 straight days with this student. That's the 2x10 strategy. So we were going to do this from a perspective of plan, do, study, act. This is what it would look like. The first page here is really where we lay out what are our goals, what's the framework here, what are the learning questions we want to ask. And so as we go into the next slide, we're going to get into the plan part. And the plan part is really where we're talking about what are the details of what we're going to execute here. What is the 2x10 strategy? What do we need to set up? Is it, do we need to prepare people on how to ask open-ended questions that lead to the student talking more than we're talking, things like that. The other important piece here on the front end is throw out some predictions. It's really important. What are your goals with this intervention? What do you hope is going to happen, right? If your prediction is, I'm going to have 100% participation in my 2x10 and I'm going to have 100 students, maybe, but maybe it's like 80%. So really start to think about what do you predict is going to happen? And then you're going to do it, right? You're going to do the actual intervention. You're going to learn from it. You're going to implement everything that you set out in your plan. And then you're going to take a look at the results. What's happening? Is this 2x10 working? Do we see measurable gains? Are we seeing reduced absenteeism with those specific students that got those services? Okay. So as we move forward, the act is great. We planned, we did the thing. Now we studied, we saw a reduction in chronic absenteeism for those students. The next step is to evaluate and say, the data is showing us this was good, but could be better. Or maybe the data is showing us we should probably abandon this strategy because it had no impact at all. And so this act part, which is the final part, is us learning from what we did, making tweaks or making decisions about what is next, and then moving forward with that strategy, right? So it's really important to remember, plan, do, study, act. We need to know if what we're doing is having an impact, okay? So those are the super, super important aspects when we think about, is what we're setting out to do working? Is what we're doing having the impact we want it to have? Next slide. Great. This is bringing us to the end of session 3, and we are so grateful you stuck with us. We're going to spend a little bit of time here. We've got a survey to pass out to you, and we're going to leave some time for some questions as well. But hopefully from this session, you all were able to see a little bit more about what it would be like to mobilize your whole staff in your school, from our bus drivers to our clean team, all the way around. How are we mobilizing them to support? And we found out what's the process to even evaluate if what we're doing is having the impact that we want it to have. Great. So as we go into the next, I think we've got an evaluation, and I'm so grateful to you all. You've been great at submitting this evaluation up to this point, and we're hopeful you can give us some good feedback so we can continue to learn and grow as facilitators. Maria, anything else you want to jump in here with?
No, just encouraging everyone before you leave the call, because I know what happens once you leave, you don't get back to a survey. So if you would do that before you leave the call, we still have a few minutes, and we can actually probably turn off the recording at this point and just